Okay, good morning. We're at 48b, close to the bottom, four lines from the bottom in the middle of the line, the Sava Rabbi Yossi. So we're in the middle of discussing the idea of Zev Zegorim. So in the context of if something grows, vegetables grow with they're partially nurtured by a source of Avodah Zarah. So is it a problem? Um, and so we're going to examine this idea of Zev Zegorim. Something has multiple causes or multiple sources. How do we treat that in different kinds of cases? So we're in the middle of the sugya, but it's a good place to start. So Rabbi Yossi Zev Zegorim Aser. Does Rabbi Yossi really hold that if you have multiple sources, it's still forbidden? In other words, if you have sources of Isur and also sources of Heter, does that mixed source make it forbidden? Vatanya, but we have a brisa. Rabbi Yossi Omer, notin yichur shel orla ve'ein notin egos shel orla. You can plant a branch of orla. So orla is fruit that grows in the first 3 years of a tree. You're not allowed to eat it, and then the fourth year is called Netar Ravai. Um, but orla is forbidden. So, and that's only the fruit, not the other parts of the tree. Okay, so it's fine to take the branch of an orla tree and use that to plant another tree. Okay, because there's no Easter there. Now, vein notin ego shel orla, but you can't take the nut of like the fruit of a tree, for example, a nut, and plant it. I mean, they shoot peri because the nut is considered the fruit and it's orla. But if you did plant the nut, but then you um uh but like modify the tree, like you trim it or you graft it, then that's mutar. Then it's okay. But then we also have a brisa, motor of Shimnata v'hibrich v'hirkiv, if you planted it and then layered it or grafted it, mutar. So what appears to be the case is that Rabbi Yossi said, look, the original part of the resulting tree is from this forbidden nut, but part of it is also through other labors that you put into it. Or combining it with other trees. So, and he says it's mutar. So, how come in our Mishnah he appears to say that a mix is aser? And you might want to answer, Shani Leil Rabbi Yossi ben Shari Surin Lavodas Kochavim. Okay, because our Mishnah is dealing with Avodas Kochavim, so we're more strict about this kind of thing. Orla is not, in the same category, so that's why he would be matir. He'd say it's okay with regard to Orla, but not with regard to Avodas Zarah. But no, we can't say that. Mishani Le, does Rabbi Yossi make that distinction? Tanya, Sada Shani's Dabla Bezevel Avodas Kochavim. If you have a field that was fertilized with manure that came from Avodas Kochavim, or a cow that you fattened up on food from Avodas Kochavim. So Tani Chada, one brisa says, "Sadati Zarah parati shachet." You can plant the field and slaughter and eat the cow. In other words, it's fine. Tanya idach. Another brisa says, "Sadati bar parati raza." Let the field. You have to not use the field to grow anything, and let the cow lose weight. Right? Let it lose the weight that it gained from the forbidden material. So, my love, Harabi Yosef Harabanan. So we have here two opinions about something that appears to be about a mixed source thing. One says mutar, one says aser. Now, who's the one that says aser? Generally, it's Rabbanan say aser and Rabbi Yossi says mutar. So, and here we don't see a distinction between avodah zarah and what was the other thing? Oh yeah, so here we say even by avodas kochavim, Rabbi Yossi would say mutar. So how come in our Mishnah he says aser? So low. No, you don't have to say that's the argument in the Brisa. Rabbi Lazar v'Rabbanan. It's a different argument. It's Rabbi Lazar and the rabbis, and we'll see. Rabbi Eliezer also weighs in on this topic. Hey, Rabbi Eliezer v'Rabbanan. So which argument between them are you talking about? Elam Rabbi Eliezer v'Rabbanan. Or okay, here's one argument between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbanan regarding yeast, like starter dough. Ditznan. Sa'ar shel chulin v'shel truma shenaflu l'toch ha'isa. If you have sourdough of chulin and truma, and it got mixed into dough that you're, a new loaf of bread that you're baking. Lo b'zeh kedei lachmitz, lo b'zeh kedei lachmitz, but you don't have sufficient sourdough to um, cause the whatever it is fermentation of the new dough. In other words, you've got half as much sourdough as you need from Avodah Zarah, and half as much you need from sorry, not Avodah Zarah, but chulin, and half as much as you need from truma. So they combine, and there's enough for the bread to become chametz, right? To I don't know what's the verb, not ferment, but become leavened. V'nisarfu v'chimtzu. So together they're enough. Rabbi Elazar omer achar ha'achron niba, which it depends which one went in first, right? The one that went in last is the one that gave it enough power to bake the bread. Okay, so in other words, if the truma was the last ingredient to be added, then it's forbidden. If the truma came first, but it wasn't useful, wasn't enough, and then you put in chulin, and that made it enough, then you consider the whole thing chulin. The rabbis say, Ben shnafel Yisrael lechatchila, Ben shnafel Yisrael lebasof, eino aser. Ad sheyehu b'kadei lachametz. The rabbi said, it doesn't matter which one in first. You need each ingredient. Each ingredient is, enough to, well, each ingredient is enough to be considered, but it's not, well, I guess neither ingredient is enough to be considered, right? So if you have a half measure of truma that went in, whether it went in first or last, it's not significant. But only if enough truma went in that by itself would make it chametz, would make it work, that you would forbid it. Okay, so Rabbi, but Abai said about that, this is only if if your regular the sa'ar fell in, you took it out, then you put in enough truma sa'ar to make it work, then it's asr. Well, but if you didn't take out, sorry, the other way around, you didn't take out the forbidden part, then asr. Then even if there's only a little bit of truma sa'ar in the dough, it's still asr. So but what comes out of this is what Rabbi Elazar says. You go by, you will go by the last one, right? 1 second. Rabbi Elazar says, um, so in Rabbi Elazar's scenario, there is a scenario where you consider both sources, right? The half measure of truma and the half measure of cholin. And if the truma went in last, then he says it's forbidden. So maybe this is the argument which indicates Rabbi Elazar's position on Zev Zagorim. So the Gemara says maybe not. Maybe there's a different principle behind the argument. Maybe, how do you know that? Dilma Talmud Rabbi Elazar mishum de achar achron niba. Maybe it's not a question of Zev Zagorim. It's more a question of which came last. In fact, that's what Rabbi Elazar stated in this brisa. Igamar Birsura Asura. If you finish with the truma sourdough, then it's forbidden. Igamar Batera Mutarin. So it's not Bain Salke, Bain Lo Salke, whether or not you removed it. So it's not a Zev Zagorim argument. It's a question of which came first, which came last argument. Ella, so we have to find another source where we can conclusively show that Rabbi Elazar has this position against the rabbis on Zev Zagorim. So here we go. El Rabbi Elazar v'Rabbanan de'etzim. It's an argument about wood of an Asherah. And this is of a Zarah. It's not. We have Mishnah. No talhimena eitzim asur b'hana. If you took wood from an Asherah tree, you can't use it. Kisik basa tanur. And if you did use it, you used it in your oven. Chada shutas. If it's a new oven, you have to break it because basically the oven is made of clay, right, or ceramic or something made that can't be made kosher. You have to break it. Yashan yutza. If it's an old oven, then you just have to have it cool and then let it be used again, right? So So you can see where we're going here, that the old oven, maybe we're going to suggest, is like the oven is improved by the firing of the wood. So if all of the burning that went on in the oven is from Avodah Zarah, you have a problem. But if it's been used by regular wood and by Avodah Zarah wood, so then maybe we're going to try to say that this is a Zev issue. So let's develop this. If you bake bread in the oven while it's usher, then you can't eat the bread. You can't use the bread. And what happens if this loaf of bread gets mixed up with other kosher loaves of bread? Then because you don't know which one it is, you can't use any of them. Rabbi Lazar Omer, no, what you do is you kind of redeem it, right? You take any loaf of bread from the mixture, throw it in the Dead Sea, and then use the rest. Right. So in other words, you've forfeited the value of one of the value of the loaf of forbidden bread that was mixed in. You can use the rest. Amar, so they said to him, "Ein podin blavos kochavim, pidyon blavos kochavim." Where do you get this idea? You have the idea of pidyon when it comes to hekdesh and various other things, right? Master Sheni, but nobody says you can redeem something of avodah zarah, right? It's forbidden. There is no way to buy it out. So what are you talking about? Um, so as I said before, the point of bringing this argument is that Rabbi Lazar seems to say that if you have a mixed cause, right? So the old oven, which has mixed sources of improvement. Um, One second. So Rabbi Lazar agrees that it's forbidden, right? Um, so does this indicate that Rabbi Lazar says Zev Zagorim is asur? Um, all right, so now we have Rabbi Lazar, but what's the opposite position? What's the position of Zev Zagorim is mutar? Rabbanan the Pligala, the Rabbi Lazar Maninu. Who are these rabbis who take issue with that? Yilem Rabbanan Dietsim, if you want to say in this brisa about the wood and the oven, Achmure Machmure. Actually, the rabbis are being more Machmir than Rabbi Lazar, right? They're saying like, not only can you not eat that bread, you can't if it got mixed up with other breads. There's no way to permit the other bread, the kosher bread. El Rabbanan Desar. So it must be the rabbis from the Mishnah we brought previously about the sourdough, right? The mixture of truma and chulin. So Emer the Shamus Rabbanan de Makile Basar. Okay, so you found the rabbis said that Zev Zagorim with Saar is mutar. Bavodas Kachavim Makile. Okay, so you brought me an example from Truma. What about Avodah Zarah? Like, wouldn't you say that even the rabbis would say that if it's regarding Avodah Zarah, Zev Zagorim would still be aser? Eliolam Harab Yossi. Okay, so we can't really pin this Zev Zagorim opinion on Rabbi Lazar and the rabbis and their dispute, so it must be Rabbi Yossi. V'ha Rabbanan. This the brisa that we had a problem with before that says you can't use the field or the cow that got fattened with both regular food and avodah zarah food. That is according to the Rabbanan and the brisa of um, and in that brisa where Rabbi Yossi says you can use the field and eat the cow. That's Rabbi Yossi. Um, so so we have a problem because Rabbi Yossi's opinion there is opposite of that in our Mishnah. So Rabbi Yossi will divrayim d'Rabbanan Amalu. No, Rabbi Yossi is not taking that position. He's saying to the rabbis, even if I were to agree with you that that Zev Zagorim is that Zev Zagorim is okay. Um, No, I say it's okay, but if I agree with you, even if I were to agree with you, you who say that Zev Zagorim is a problem, Oduli Mias, at least admit to me, Af Yirakos Bimosek Shamim, in our Mishnah, that the vegetables in the wintertime you can't use um, because of the leaves contributing to the mulch. So why do the rabbis disagree, Rabbanan? Why do they say that it's okay to use this vegetables that to which nourishment was contributed by leaves of Avodah Zarah. K'diyama Rav Mari Breder of Kana, as the Rav Mari says. As he said, we saw yesterday that he said that, you can have something that is good in part and bad in part. The saying was something about the skin and the meat, like you could have something that is good for the exterior of the animal, but bad for the internal parts of the animal. So, um, there's two factors in the tree that offset each other. There's the leaves, which they admit nourish the plants, but there's also the shade, which in the winter contribute negatively, and so the net effect of the Avodah Zarah additives is zero. That's why they say here that it is permitted.
Didn't we learn earlier about that? You can redeem something?
Yeah, but not Avodah Zarah. What are you referring to?
I'm trying to think. I was thinking about that in the last few minutes. That sure, if
It
you redeem it
depends.
on money, then the money becomes a hectic, right? You can use the money, and the animal becomes is no longer hectic.
Yes, so that's operative in things like Hektish and Maser Sheni. You might remember, right, that you can take your Maser Sheni, you can buy it back basically and spend the money in
Right.
Yerushalayim,
That's
right?
right.
But that does not apply to Avodah Zarah. Nobody thinks that about Avodah Zarah, that you can buy the, that you can redeem this thing. If you have an item that was worshipped or that comes under the category of Avodah Zarah, there's no way to make it, to kosher it, right? You can't redeem it with money. It is what it is. Its essence is forbidden, and there is no way to buy it out.
Hmm.
Um, okay, and I'll review them. Shmuel halacha Rabbi Yossi that zev zegorim we rule like Rabbi Yossi that it is permitted. Okay,
What's
so now,
permitted? That there you can use the mixture?
yes, correct.
But
Um,
what's the proportion? 20%, 50, 80%?
oh, good question. Good question. Oh, it doesn't really discuss that. Um, what is the proportion? So it's interesting. I mean, this may or may not be related, but when it comes to, I recently was dealing with an issue of Shabbos and hiring someone non-Jewish to do something for you on Shabbos, right? So the dodge around that, you're not supposed to do that. It's only drabanan, but you're not allowed to do that. The dodge around that is if you're paying him partially for work that's not done on Shabbos, then it's okay. So, the example that comes to mind, and I don't know if everybody subscribes to this or not, but newspaper, right? If you're paying for a weekly, 7 days a week newspaper subscription, which includes delivery on Shabbos, so you can say you can do that because, and again, I don't know if everyone subscribes to this or not, but you may be able to do that because you're paying for the whole week subscription. Yes, some of it is done by the non-Jew on Shabbos, but since it's a mixture, it's considered okay. So that might be a similar thing to what's going on here, but I don't know. And in that case, I think that we rule that it can be a very small. It's really a dodge, and again, it's only a drabanan, but it can be a very small proportion that you're paying for that's not on Shabbos. So I don't know if that answers the question.
I don't
Um,
know, but there is such a thing as a shtar mechira, where if a restaurant is open or the person owns it, he sells his component to the non-Jew to keep the restaurant open.
mhm.
That
Uh, right. So how does that?
not
Uh,
exactly the same thing, but he is a partnership with someone or a partial partnership, and on Shabbat he sells it so all the profits, but somehow I don't know, it's a little complicated,
yeah.
but he's not working there, and yet the non-Jew is working, and he's, let's say, a restaurant, a pizza shop, whatever,
Hmm.
and Dunkin' Donuts is open on 7 days
Hmm.
a week, so they have some deal. Again, I don't know enough of the
Okay.
halacha. I know that they do it, people do it, and
Anyway, yeah. So I don't know the answer to your question. Is there a proportion that is important here? But we haven't encountered that yet, so I'm going to assume no. And here we have a case. There was a garden that was fertilized with manure from Avodas Kochavim. Shalach Avraham Kamid Rabbi Yosef. Avraham asked Rabbi Yosef, "Can we eat from this garden?" Amarle, Hachi Amridu Mishmuel, Halacha Rabbi Yossi. The halachos were like Rabbi Yossi. So, in other words, not all the fertilizing was done by fertilizer of Avodah Zarah. It's just contributing. So, since it's a mixture, it's okay. Next minute. Now told me if you took branches from an Asherah tree, Asurin Bana, you can't use them. Hisik ben Satanur, if you fire the oven, this is what we just quoted earlier in today's Gemara. Im Chada Shutas, if it's a new oven, you have to break it. Im Yashan, Yutzan. And if it's an old oven, then just let it cool before it's used again for kosher purposes. If you bake bread, you can't use the bread. Bacheros, if that bread got mixed up with kosher bread, you can't use any of them. You can redeem it, as it were, or you can take the one loaf, the value, the value of the forbidden loaf of bread, the Avodah Zarah loaf of bread, and get rid of that, destroy it, throw it in the sea, and then you can use the rest. So Amrullah, the rabbi said to me, what we were just talking about. There is no idea of redemption for Avodah Zarah. Now, what's Rabbi Lazar would have a different idea of how this works. It's it's not really redeeming it, but it's I don't know. I mean, he explains it. He would understand it in a way that I don't know that this is the. I mean, I don't really understand Rabbi Lazar, and neither do the rabbis. So I'm not sure how to explain it.
Doesn't say the word Yodim. It says Yolich Ana'ah
Melech.
Melech.
Yeah. So
He
the
doesn't
rabbis
use the word
explain that
Podim.
as pidyon, but he clearly doesn't see it as pidyon.
He doesn't say the word Pidyon, no.
Right. So he has some other mechanism through which it works, which I don't really claim to understand what his opinion is.
Wasn't he
How is that
destroying
not
it?
pidyon? I'm sorry?
He's destroying it.
Yeah, but he doesn't know which one he's destroying, right? You got your one loaf of bread that got mixed up with kosher loaves of bread. You don't know which is which, so you take one of them and throw it away. Okay? But you're not necessarily throwing away the one that had the Avodah Zarah problem.
To throw
You're
away
just
both
throwing
of
away
them.
its value.
To throw away both of them.
That's what the rabbis say. You got to throw away all of them. But Rabbi Lazar says no, it's fine to throw away just one of them.
Where does he say one of them? He says Yolich Hana'ah.
Yeah, nisarva. Here, look back at the Mishnah. Nisarva b'acheros. If that avodah zarah bread got mixed up with other ones, right? Kula nasuras mana. All of them become forbidden, right? The kosher ones and the non-kosher one. And Rabbi Lazar says, so what do you do? So how do you fix it? Rabbi Lazar says you can fix it. Yolich hanal yamamelech. Now you're interpreting is take that one, but obviously he doesn't know which one that is. Otherwise there wouldn't be a problem, right? So take the value of one of them, right, or any of the loaves of bread, assuming they're all more or less the same, and get rid of that one, and that will suffice to.
Look, it's kilo the profit or the hana'ah, the benefit, the profit, but how do you? I mean, the profit from what? It could be from all of it, right?
No. Clearly, what it means is you take the profit of the value of the one forbidden loaf, and get rid of that, even if it's not that actual loaf.
How do you determine what the profit is or the benefit?
Okay, let's say they're all single rise. They're all more or less the same. So the value of one of them is equal to the value of any of them.
Well, you have to determine what the value is.
Yeah, whatever. It's. I mean, let's take a simple case where
It's
they're
what the
all
market
identical
will
loaves of
bear.
bread.
It's what the market will bear. If he can sell this one for 20
Yeah,
cents,
but
$3.
let's take the simple case and assume that you have all these loaves of bread they're all $8.50. They're all pretty much the same. Okay.
Is there any reason why the Gemara chooses the word the Yama Melech? What about the Yom Tichon? Another, does it matter? Is it salt? Does that make a difference?
That's a good question. So I think I'm guessing that the origin of it is when it comes to coins, right? That when you have to, if you take coins that have hekdesh on them, redeemed onto them, then basically you have to destroy them, and more saltier water will decompose the metal much quicker, right? But yeah, I think it's just an expression, right? It's just like this is the best way to get rid of it. Could you throw it in the Mediterranean? I guess so. I assume that would destroy it as well. Or you could melt it down also, or you could I don't know. There's any number of not any. You could grind it up into powder, or whatever. It's just a convenient um,
It's just an
expression of
expression. It's a big
destroying.
toy. It's lav
Yeah,
davka.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Not to him on a karkar, going on the Mishnah. If you took a piece of wood from the Asherah tree to use as a karkar is a like a pick, right? Like think of a guitarist or a weaver, right? They use this as a tool. Asr you can't use it. Argbos a baged. Now, what if you did use it and you wove a shirt with it? Asr you can't use the shirt because the labor that went into it is tainted by the Avodah Zarah tool. Nisar b'acherim, what if the shirt becomes mixed with others? B'acherim, and then that mixture becomes mixed. In other words, it's like really, there's no way, there's a whole bunch, the whole warehouse full of clothes, and one of them is an Avodah Zarah problem. Kul nasarim b'ana. It's all forbidden. Rabbi Lazar Omer, Yoli chanali yom melach. No, you can still take one shirt, throw it in the sea, and you're fine. Amr loin put in levos kachamim. So same argument, and of course the Gemara is going to ask, what's the difference between these two cases? They seem to be saying exactly the same thing. Usricha, we need both. Diashmin and kamaisa, if we only talked about the baking, the oven, the wood for the oven. Bahadakam Rabbi Lazar, Mishum de Beidna de Kagam Rapas, Kalile Surah. Maybe that's why Rabbi Lazar says it's forbidden, because when the baking is completed, the fuel is already gone, right? The wood is already burnt. Aval b'karkar de'isei surah be'ene. If you use this tool to make the shirt, at the end when the shirt is finished, you still have the tool. It's not like the tool got used up into the product, right? In the case of the wood, the energy or the mass from the wood converted to energy and is now kind of somehow part of the bread. But in the case of the pick, of the weaver's pick, that's not the case. It's a tool, but it didn't get you. It didn't like the tool material of Avodah Zarah doesn't go directly into the shirt. So maybe Rabbi Lezer would say it's permitted. So no. So the mission tells us in both cases it's still forbidden. V'yashmin and karkar. What does it only tell us about the pick? B'hakam rabbanon. That's why the rabbis say it's permitted because the pick is still existing. It didn't give up of itself to make the shirt. Whereas the wood, the Avodah Zarah wood is in some sense incorporated directly into the bread. So maybe they would say in that case forbidden. No. So sricha. So the mission tells you the first case to tell you that even there the rabbis say it is forbidden. Amar Chia Beret Rabba Bar
So
Nachmani.
what's the point of the rabbis holding the pick then? You're saying it would be permitted because it still has the pick according
No,
to
no, the rabbi. No, that's. It turns out that it makes no difference. But the Mishnah tells us both cases to tell us that it makes no difference, right? There's no difference whether it's
oh
wood that gets consumed or a pick that does not get consumed. The rabbis say forbidden, and Rabbi Lazar says permitted to if you get rid of the value of the one.
so the Rabbi Elazar would say permitted with the case of the pick.
No,
Not
no, they don't. They
oh
don't. That's why
not
the
the,
Mishnah has to tell us both. So you wouldn't make that assumption. The Mishnah says, don't think that the rabbis would say it's okay in the case of the pick. No, even in the case of the pick, they say it is forbidden. And Rabbi Lazar, don't say that he would only say it's permitted regarding the pick. Even in the case of wood that gets consumed, he still says permitted. That's why the Mishnah tells us both cases.
I see.
Amar Rav Chia Rabbi Bar Nachmani, Amar Rav Chisda, Amar Zeiri. Rav Chia said, Halacha Rabbi Lazar. We go with Rabbi Lazar. Ikadi Amri, some say that we read this as follows: Amar Rav Chisda, Amar Li Abba Bar Chisda, Hachi Amar Zeiri. This is Halacha Rabbi Lazar. So whatever, however it was transmitted, the halacha is like Rabbi Lazar. Amar Vada Bar Ava, Lo Shanu El Pas. It's only the allowing the getting rid of the one loaf of bread from the mixture and using the rest, that's only in the case of bread, aval chavis. But if it's a barrel of wine that you got mixed up with other barrels of wine, um, then we don't say we don't allow this. Um, mm, Rav Chisda amar afilu chavis materis. But Rav Chisda says you can still use the Rabbi Lazar strategy. Um, what is the difference? Um, So, according to Rashi, it appears that the difference here is actually what we said before, that according even according, so the rabbis would say always asur. Rabbi Lazar would say, when it's asur, it's it's mutar when the um it doesn't make sense because what about the pick? Um,
Well, Rabbi Eliezer is usher in terms of the bread, but I'm sorry, permitted for the bread, but usher for the wine, right?
1 second. Oh, okay. Because if you're talking about barrels of wine that are mixed together, and one barrel is made of wood from Avodah Zarah, then then the actual Avodah Zarah is containing the wine, right? The actual wood from the Avodah Zarah is containing the wine. Not the case of the bread, right? Where you used wood to stoke the fire to bake the bread. You can't look at the loaf of bread and say, "Oh, I can see." I can tangibly identify the Avodah Zarah wood here. No, it's not the case, right? Same with the pick. You can't tangibly identify in the shirt the labor or the ingredient added by the pick. But in the case of a barrel of wine made of wood from Avodah Zarah that's mixed up with a bunch of barrels of wine that are kosher, right? Then the individual you can't say I'm just going to get rid of any of these barrels because that one barrel it's like it still has the tangible wood of Avodah Zarah is still there. So then Rebbe Lezer would say my strategy wouldn't work in that case.
Because the
Um,
wood is still there.
sorry,
The wood
because
isn't
the wood
burned
is
up.
there.
The
Yeah,
wood is
it's
still
it's
there.
tangible. It's tangible. The Easter is tangible. And how got the Zarah Chavisa the Yen Nesach B'Chamrei? This happened to somebody. Also coming to Rav Chisda. He went to Rav Chisda. Amar Shkolar Bezuzo Shnei Benara. Go take 4 zuz, presumably the value of this barrel of wine, um, and throw it away. Throw it in the river. V'nishtarilach, and we will. And we'll make it. We'll say you can use the rest. So Rav Chisda did not rule like what we just said. It's he ruled that it's still okay to just get rid of the value of one of the barrels, and then you can sell the rest of the barrels.
But the wine is still there. He just
Yes, the wine is
redeemed
still
it,
there.
quote unquote, redeemed it for
Yeah,
value, but the actual product, the wine, is still there and the barrel is still there.
yes, that's right. Next Mishnah, Ketzim Mevatla. How do you decommission Avodah Zarah? We've discussed before that only a non-Jew can do that, right? The non-Jew who worship, or not necessarily the same one, but non-Jews who worship something, let's say the tree in this case, if they stop worshiping it, right? If they can decommission it, okay? They're like, you know what? This tree doesn't have any divine powers after all. We can use it for firewood. That decommissions it. Okay, a Jew cannot do that, right? A Jew who used something for Avodah Zarah, or even uh, even a tree that was used by non-Jews for Avodah Zarah, let's say you bought the tree, there's no way for you to decommission it. But anyway, so how does the decommissioning work for the Ovid of Ozar? Kirsein v'zerad, if you prune the tree or trim the tree, not doing a makel or sharvit, afilu all that, or you take a branch from it to use as a stick, or even a leaf from it to use, then that demonstrates harizabitla. That demonstrates that you no longer think it has divine power and is no longer an object of worship. Then it's decommissioned. Shipa Litzarka, but if you're doing it to improve the tree, right? Let's say you're a landscaper and you're like, oh, nice Avodah Zarah tree. Let me trim it a little bit so it, give it a little bit of a haircut so it looks nice, right? So that's for its own purpose. Asura, then that's not decommissioning. Shalom Litzarka, but if you did it not for its own needs, but because you wanted to use the trimmings, mutaris, then it is decommissioned. It becomes permitted to use again.
So who's doing
Um,
it? Oh, but the Gentile has to do it.
yeah, right.
And if
Now,
you
also,
hire him, if you hire him to do it, is he a shaliach? Is he your shaliach?
good question. I mean, I'm assuming that we're talking about it never came into your ownership in the first place, right? It's like um, the tree still belongs to the Ovid of Zara, and he's selling firewood from it. Can you buy that firewood? If it has the status of Avodah Zarah, you cannot because you can't use it for anything. But if he's chopped down the tree because he no longer considers it Avodah Zarah, then you can buy it. You can use that wood. You can buy it from him and use it for firewood. Now, Osen Shvoim Matayalayan, what happens to the chips of wood? Okay, so you're trimming the tree or whatever, you're giving it a haircut for its own purpose. What about, so the tree is still Avodah Zarah. What about the stuff that you cut off? Pliki bar Rav Huna Rabbi Chia bar Rav. There's an argument. One said you can use these trimmings, and the other says you cannot. Tanya, come on, the Amar Kumutarin. We have a brisa that supports that you can use them. The Tanya, Ovid Kochavim Shashipa Avodas Kochavim Sarko. If a non-Jew, an idol worshiper, trims his Avodas Kochavim tree for Sarko for his own needs, he ushvael mutarin. Then the Asherah is decommissioned and the chips are decommissioned. Everything is permitted. Litzarka, but if it's for the tree itself, he asura, the tree is still forbidden. Still about Irish mutarin, but the trimmings that's okay to use. V'Yisrael sheshipa avos kachavim. What about a Jew who shaves chips off an asherah? Bein l'tzarko, regardless of why he did it, he ushva asurin. The tree is still avodah zarah, and the chips are still avodah zarah, because again, a Jew can't decommission avodah zarah. Itmar.
Well, how does he get the tree? You said you were
Yeah,
saying
maybe he
before.
was hired. Maybe he bought the tree.
So he's not, but he's not supposed to own it though. He's not supposed to have a voter. So why? How does he get the tree?
Well, it's telling you that it's even if you bought, even if you come into possession of it, you can't get off from it.
So if you're buying it or acquiring it, it's that in itself is hana, isn't it?
Maybe so. But what if you did it already? Can you use the tree? The answer is no. You can't use the chips either.
Not even b'di'evid, right?
Right. Itmar. We have another statement about this. Avos kochavim shenishtabra. You have a statue, an idol that got broken, like the wind blew it over. Rav Amar Tsarich Levatel Kol Kisa Makisa. Every piece of that so it wasn't that it was deliberately destroyed by the non-Jew, it broke. So every piece of it that's in broken pieces, every piece still has the status of Avodah Zarah unless it is decommissioned by the non-Jew. Shmuel Amar Avodos Kochavim Eina Betela Ella Derech Kedilasa. It Shmuel says, so it sounds like he's saying that it's the only way it can become decommissioned if it's if it broke in the course of its the way it grows. So now we're talking, I guess, about an Asherah, because a stone statue doesn't grow. But the Gemara is going to like question what's going on here right away. Adrabah, derech dilasamim mevatla. If it broke while growing, right? Is it really, does that decommission it? No, it has to be purposely decommissioned by a non-Jew. El hachikar. This is what Shmuel is saying. You don't, if it broke by itself, then you don't have to be mevatel it. The non-Jew doesn't have to be mevatel it unless it broke by itself. So in other words, what Shmuel is saying is if the non-Jew broke it deliberately, it's decommissioned. If it naturally broke without anybody intervening, um, then um, it needs to be decommissioned. It doesn't need to be commissioned unless it broke in a natural way. So Lema Wakamifli was their argument.
What are you saying? If it breaks by itself, it is
No,
no
if it breaks
longer.
by itself, typically I would say that um, that and I'm not sure what the distinction is. Like maybe it's like an unusual event that caused it to break. Then um, it doesn't need to be. Um, it doesn't need to be batel, doesn't need to be decommissioned. But if, as a natural process of aging, it broke, then that doesn't indicate that it's lost its power. It's like that's the natural process. This is the way the gods work, right? They're like the tree. This tree god, it grows bigger and then it falls over, right? That's its natural thing. So that would not, Derech Dilasa would not automatically decommission it. It would have to be manually decommissioned. But I don't know
So if it's hit by
maybe if a
lightning,
hurricane came
let's say,
across,
or hit by lightning, let's say.
yeah, hit by lightning or a hurricane or whatever, some unusual event, that would seem to indicate that it's lost its powers. Like you can't even what kind of God are you? You can't keep the lightning away, right? So maybe this is the argument here. Tamar Savar Ovdin Lishvarin. Like the one who says, Rav says that you have to decommission each piece. He thinks that the Avodah Zarah still obtains in each piece. It would be normal for the Avodah Zarah to worship each piece of a broken idol. Um, and Marsavar ain't Ovdin L'Shvarin. And Shmuel says, no, if it's broken, it's broken. That typically they would not worship it. Shmuel says, no, that's not it. Ovdin L'Shvarin. Everybody thinks that idol worshippers are going to worship even the broken pieces. Now, what they're arguing about is then the pieces, the tree fell down and broke into four pieces, but then each piece got chopped up into different pieces. Then Marsavar Shiva Shor Masuri and Marsavar Shiva Shor Mutari. One holds that it still maintains its idolatry status, the other holds it does not. If you by say, or you could say, the Kuliyama Shiva Shor Mutari. No, everybody says that if it got broken up multiple times, then nobody worships it anymore. It's decommissioned. Here we're talking about if it was a composite idol, right? It wasn't carved from a single stone, all right? It was put together like a Lego, So then if the Lego idol falls apart, then each piece still has its integrity, and then it would be there's room to say one view would be that each Lego piece still has Avodah Zarah status, and the other would say no, it was only the whole thing. But the argument is only about a Lego construction where, different pieces are fused together to make the thing, and then when it broke, that's how it broke. Okay. So you can see where there's more room to say that each piece is still considered Avodah Zarah, but you could also say that it's not. Since anybody can put it back together, it's still divine. And Shmuel says that it only needs to be decommissioned if it broke in the normal way, dahainu arche, because that's its normal way. Halav gedilasahi, but the idol that we're talking about that fell and broke into pieces, that's not the natural way. Ein sri chalabatal, and you don't have to nullify it. That is the end of this parak, and of course, good place to stop for today. We'll pick up tomorrow with the new parak. Okay, have a good day, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.